Good afternoon, everybody. So the topic of discussion for today is SAP Data Archiving as a Service. So through the course of the presentation, I will walk you through what is SAP Data Archiving, why is it required, and how organizations stand to benefit from it. And then I will move on to our offering in this space and how it can help you to maximize from your data archiving initiative. So firstly, what is SAP Data Archiving? So data archiving can be defined as the process of moving infrequently accessed data from high-cost database storage, that is your tier 1 enterprise class storage, to lower-cost archive storage, while still retaining real-time access to this data via SAP screens. So as you can see from the diagram, the SAP system contains tables, which are in turn mapped to what are known as archive objects. And by running the jobs for archiving, you can move this data out of these tables into flat files, which can reside in an archive file system. While they are sitting outside the SAP system, the architecture ensures that you still have access to these data from your SAP screens in real time. So why SAP Data Archiving? So it's a known fact that SAP application performance degrades by 30% due to large unmanaged data growth. And this can start right from 750 GB sizes and with an annual growth of 15% year on year. And storage costs are typically higher by 40% as a result of not archiving data. And therefore, also your maintenance windows, upgrade windows are 40% longer. And this results in also business downtimes and increased administration costs. And lastly, there is also a high risk of not meeting regulatory and compliance requirements because you won't have a formal retention strategy. Now, what data archiving initiatives force you to do is to put in place a retention policy across your organization for different types of data, and therefore it helps you to reduce your risk. So let's talk about data archiving in terms of when you should consider it and what should be archived. So firstly, the when part. So typically, we've seen customers with a system age of 3 to 5 years and a database size of more than 750 GB with an annual growth rate of 15%, choosing to do archiving. So even with 750 GB, if you were to archive your data, your storage costs will reduce and your performance is likely to improve. And in terms of what needs to be archived, it is critical to identify what data across your function modules in SAP need to be archived. So there are different ways to do it. Firstly, you would look at space savings that are achievable. You would then look at things like business impact and the dependencies of the data. You would also look at application performance because some tables may be causing performance issues in reports and transactions. So it's important to look at how to archive them or do some housekeeping around those tables. And finally, the decision on what to archive can also be based on what not to archive. There might be some data which is business critical that business teams don't want to archive. They want to have real-time access via certain reports which are not archive access enabled. And therefore, you would choose what not to archive and arrive at a final list of what can be archived. So let's look at some of the best practices based on our experience in implementing data archiving solutions for customers the world over. Firstly, it's important to look at what are the low-hanging fruits, which means look at fast-growing technical data such as application logs, table change logs, etc., and also some low-critical functional archive objects, things like subsequent posting data or plan and actual line items. So these can give you immediate benefits from a space-saving standpoint, while cutting short your implementation time as well as your business impact. And then the other important thing is to have a thorough investigation in terms of the business impact of archiving, which means to say, if the data were to be archived, how would business teams read this data or access this data from SAP screens? Which reports and transactions would be required to enable archive access? And also consider things like interfaces to other systems where this data is being read. For example, even extraction to BI systems. So these are some things that need to be studied before you take up a particular archiving object for implementation. And the last thing is working with business teams to close older data. So the system is set up in such a way that open documents, that is documents which are not yet business complete, cannot be archived. And this is rightly so because You don't want to be archiving something that's still operationally open. So what we do typically in an implementation project is to work with business teams to help them to close this older data, which means running some pre-processing programs, running test archive jobs to identify why the data could not be archived, what is open, what are the dependencies, and then working closely with business teams to have them close these data. This might be using some standard methods of closing data, running some clearance jobs, or it may also involve developing some custom programs to close older data for achieving maximum benefits from archiving. So the other best practices, look at devising archive access methods, and these should be in agreement with business teams because they are the people who are going to be accessing this data. So for them to sign off on the archiving project is very important. Then clearly define residence times and retention policies. So what this means is, when we say residence time, it essentially means some data is left in the SAP database. Could be the last 1 year data or the last 2 years data, and anything older than that can be removed, that is archived into the archive system. And then in terms of retention policy, this defines how much time as a whole the data is kept, accessible either in the database or in the archive, post which it can be disposed of. This is overall retention time of data. And it's important to set this or arrive at this definition in conjunction with business and legal teams. So all of this information that's collected during this analysis phase and during several workshops with business teams should be put into a detailed blueprint document and an archiving policy. So when one reads this archiving policy, it should clearly state what will be archived, when it will be archived, that is in terms of periodicity, which times of the year, etc. And finally, and most importantly, how users will access the data from the archives. And then get a sign off of this blueprint to proceed to implementation. So talking about access to archive data, there are several ways possible. Firstly, standard transactions and reports. There are several standard transactions and reports for each archive object that are already enabled to access the archive data as well. There's also something called Document Relationship Browser in SAP, which is transaction AL01, whereby you can look at certain documents, say for example a financial accounting document or a sales order, and look at all the related documents as well. It's a document relationship browser. And in this relationship browser, you can also view the archive data, which is a default out-of-the-box SAP functionality, which just needs configuration to be set up. The other view is a technical view, where there's something called an Archive Explorer in a standard SAP that allows you to access the records which are stored outside your SAP system in the archive. And lastly, there may be cases where none of the first three options are viable, and there might be some custom reports that business users use on an ongoing basis, and they also want to read archive data from these custom reports. So in this case, we modify these custom reports and make those function module calls so that they can read the archive data as well. So having covered what is data archiving and why it's important, let's talk about the data archiving as a service offering from Avaali. So what we've done here is to put in place an annual subscription-based service for SAP Data Archiving with monthly payment terms. What this means really is that there is no CapEx investment required at all. So it's a completely OpEx-based model for data archiving services. And what is included in this archiving as a service offering? So firstly, we will do an upfront database analysis to arrive at a data management policy. And then we will continue to do data archiving and housekeeping services. So this could include new object implementations or other housekeeping activities. The other aspect is to do this database analysis every quarter. So how this will help your organization is to quantify the space savings that you achieve through your data management practices, and also look for some incremental archiving and housekeeping opportunities. And we will also do archive workshops with business teams twice a year during the service. So what this means is, during our analysis, we will find certain archive objects or housekeeping opportunities. And it's important to discuss with business, explain to them what these opportunities are, how they can access the data after archiving. So these workshops are also covered in this offering. And of course, managing the entire archive file system, because it's important to have the data segregated by functional area or by year or by archive object. So we will do this as part of the service. and it includes maintenance and support for implemented archive objects. So what it does not include is document archiving. This is purely a data archiving based service, and it doesn't also include any of the third-party products such as OpenText. Although Avaali does have the capabilities to implement document archiving and OpenText products, those are separate service offerings. In this offering, it is a pure data archiving as a service offering. All right, so let's take a break for a poll. I request all of you to participate in the poll questions. Thank you. So thank you for participating in the poll. So a majority of you said that your database is greater than 2 terabytes, and almost 50% said that it is between 1.5 to 2 terabytes. This is interesting. So such large databases certainly warrant a data archiving service. All right, so let's move on with the presentation. So I spoke about the offering. Now let's look at why this offering is a unique offering and how it can help your organization. So it's the most cost-effective solution. It's also loaded with rich features, as I will explain shortly. There is no upfront investment required for third-party software. And like I said, it's a fully OpEx model. It gives you hassle-free maintenance because you don't need to have any in-house personnel. So you have cost savings in terms of hiring and training people for specialized skill sets. And you can therefore allocate resources to other key projects while we take care of all your information management needs. And you get continuous support because it's an annual subscription-based contract. And it's a modular solution because apart from the base packages, we also have some optional add-on packages that could suit your specific needs. Okay, so let's look at what are the base packages and optional packages. The first base package for this data archiving as a service is for up to 15 archive objects per year. So like I said, this is an annual or a year-long offering, and through the course of this package, we will implement up to 15 new archive objects for you. The second package, base package 2, is for up to 5 archive objects, and you also have a support-only package option, which is typically customers would use after year 2 onwards. So let's look at what is the service in a little more detail in terms of the deliverables. So for base packages 1 and 2, like I said, we would do a quarterly database analysis, and then we would do the archive object implementations. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this term, an archive object encapsulates tables for a specific business document or business object in SAP. So to give you an example, FI document or FI underscore document is an archive object. So what it encapsulates is all the tables related to financial accounting data. And these are related tables. So some of them, I mean, there will be a header table and there will be several line item tables. So when we run this archive object for archiving, it will remove the entire financial accounting document as a whole, the header data and the related line item data. So this archive object really contains these relationships. It contains the programs required for archiving as well as for reading. So we will do these archive object implementations through the year based on what we have identified in each of those DB analysis sessions. It also includes housekeeping. Housekeeping is a terminology that is used for describing activities like purging of data or doing some technical archive object implementations. technical data which is really not required by business, but has been generated for various reasons in the SAP system, that those can be purged or archived. Of course, this involves support as well. So any issues, any end user queries are all resolved. So issue resolution from tickets is part of the service. And like I said, we will also do an archiving workshop, which means we will talk to each line of business, explain the archive objects under their purview, the impact, how they can access the data after it's archived, and so on. And periodic runs, what this refers to is, so it's one thing to implement an archive object, and when it is live in production, the jobs need to be run to archive the older data, and this needs to be run periodically. So say you run jobs today for data that's older than 2 years, you would again need to run it next year for the new set of data that is eligible for archiving, if you have a residence period of 2 years or 3 years. So these are called periodic runs, and they're typically spread out across the year depending on the object. So some objects, the customers may not want to run it during the year end or year beginning activities, or quarter end, quarter beginning activities. So therefore, you would need to put in place a proper schedule for these archive runs, and we will manage those schedules. So base packages 1 and 2 essentially cover pretty much the same activities. The only difference is between the number of objects. So package 1 is for up to 15 objects, and package 2 is for up to 5 objects. There's also something called, so talking about the support packages here, the support package does not involve the new archive object implementations. So what it assumes is your archiving implementation is already completed, and we will only provide a support for that environment. However, we have included the database analysis as part of this support package, just so that it might be useful to unearth some new archive objects for implementation, or at the very least, it will let you know what are the benefits you're getting from your existing archive objects. So let's take a timeout again for another poll question. I request all of you to participate. Thank you. I request more participation, please. Only 30% have participated so far. So thank you for your participation. About half of you mentioned that you use a third-party solution, and the other half mentioned that you use the standard SAP archiving solution, and you're doing it in-house so far. All right, so just to complete the description of these deliverables, so this service would typically involve maybe about 2 months of on-site presence at most for base packages 1 and 2, where we're doing implementation of archive objects as well, and the remaining work will be offshore. For the pure support model, all the work will be offshore. So the next slide gives you an overview of the support SLAs that we provide as part of our support package, as well as base packages 1 and 2. So we've defined severities based on business criticality and the associated turnaround time from a resolution standpoint. So moving on, there are some add-on packages over your base packages. So like I mentioned, base package 1 and 2 involves data archiving of standard archive objects, right? And base package 1 is for up to 15, while base package 2 is for up to 5. But there might be a case where customers might need some additional archive objects that are shown up during the quarterly DB analysis sessions. So in this case, these will be add-on packages. So any additional archive object can be added on over and above your base package. The other option here is to do custom archive object development. So this might be the case where you have some data lying in custom tables, right? So you've developed some customized solutions on top of SAP ERP, and you want to be able to archive that data as well. So we will develop the archive objects. Firstly, discuss with your business teams, design the object, look at the underlying tables and the relationships, and define the business rules. That is, the checks that need to be put in place before those data can be archived. So we will define that and design the entire archive object and develop it. So that's the second part. The third option is for custom development for archive access. So here you might need to enable some custom reports to make them archive access enabled. So we will also do that ABAP development as an add-on package. So that's pretty much it about the offering as for SAP Data Archiving service. So let's take another timeout for a poll question, please. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. So it's interesting to know that 50% of you mentioned that performance issues are mostly seen in FI module, and 33% said SD, while 17% said other modules. So this reflects also the kind of size and growth that you're seeing across your function modules, and FI being the largest. Okay, so I would like to talk about Avaali and who we are and what we do. So we were a company that's founded in 2012, operational from Jan 2013. What we do, we provide advisory services and implementation services in the area of enterprise information management. So we focus only on EIM and nothing else. So we typically take forward engagements from strategy creation to execution and then to support. And we also support the implementation of best-of-breed technology solutions in this area. How we differentiate ourselves, we have a strong understanding of information management and the best practices in information management. We have a specialized skill pool with consultants having worked on global implementation projects and advisory services engagements. And we have a high focus on accountability and delivering business value for our customers. And why Avaali? So we bring a unique solution approach, which means we are business process oriented and not really product or solution centric. So every engagement with Avaali, any implementation we do, we always take this business process approach, whereby we study the business process, understand what are the dependencies, understand the impact, and then propose the right solution. And we also focus on building best of breed, information management and ECM solutions for our customers. So that's pretty much it from me. I would like to open up the session for questions now. So one question that we've got is that I have a database size of close to 750 GB. Is this the right time to archive, and why? So I would say that while 750 GB might not be as high as some of the other databases that we've seen, it's important to look at some of the key reasons for archiving. So key reasons could be, okay, storage cost is one thing. The other thing is performance. So even if you have a database size of 750 GB, but you have certain tables that are very high or growing really fast, and they're causing performance issues, data archiving is a neat solution that will help you improve the performance of those applications. So the answer is yes, it's a good idea to look at data archiving. So another question was, new to SAP archiving, implementing it for the first time, what should I choose to archive? So this database analysis that I was referring to earlier, this will tell us clearly which are the areas that are growing quickly, which are the top sized objects, and therefore those will be the key targets for archiving. So typically, what we've seen are FI, SD modules are the ones which are the top targets for archiving. Those are the ones which grow the most. So the other another question was, what is unique about this archiving as a service offering? So like I was mentioning, this is a purely OpEx based, subscription based model for data archiving services. So what this means is, unlike other vendors offerings or things that you've seen in the past, you won't need to make an upfront investment for this. So neither do you need to make an upfront investment in products or third-party solutions, nor do you need to make an upfront investment in implementation services. So what we've done with this offering is spread out your costs across the year in equal monthly installments. Therefore, your OpEx, you have a pure OpEx based model, and it's a very cost-effective solution for you. Okay, so the other question was, we are considering doing an SAP upgrade. So when should we consider archiving? So this is a very interesting question. It's a very pertinent question, and a lot of customers ask this. And our recommendation is that we should certainly do data archiving before going for an upgrade project. There are many benefits of doing this. Firstly, upgrades involve typically involve a lot of data conversion, and it also involves business downtime, right? So the smaller your database size before you do an upgrade, the smoother your upgrade will be, the lesser downtime you will have, and therefore your cost will reduce, your business impact will be reduced. So this is a global best practice. SAP recommends this, we recommend it, and many customers the world over are doing this. So they embark upon data archiving, reduce the database size, and then take up a SAP upgrade project. So the other question was, is the solution you're providing a standard SAP archiving or open text offering? So this offering is a standard SAP archiving offering. So there is no third-party product involved. It's using the standard ADK module of SAP, and providing the archiving service based on that. Okay, the other question was, what about document archiving? What solutions are available for it? So document archiving requires typically an archive link enabled solution, a third party solution. So OpenText being one of them. So the OpenText archiving and document access solution is an archive link compliant solution. It allows you to do both data archiving, to store data archives, and more importantly, imaging and document access for your document archiving requirements. Just hold on a second, please. So the other question was, what's the approximate budget required for package one? So this is actually a very nominal price, but what we can do is we can connect up with you offline and explore what package you want exactly for your requirements and provide you the pricing for it. So another question is, will we be able to split only FI data for archive? Uh, if I understand correctly, you're asking if we can only do for FI related objects to begin with. Yeah, the answer is yes. So how the system is designed, this archive development kit is designed is for each type of business document there are archive objects defined. So you will have, for example, FI document or FI special ledger data or enterprise controlling, ECPCA, um, cost accounting, etc. So you have different archive objects for different types of data, and we can choose what we want to archive selectively. So the other question was, how can I justify the ROI for an archiving investment, archiving project investment? So, like I said, there are various benefits and cost savings that can result from data archiving projects. So your tier one enterprise class storage cost will be cut by at least 40 to 50% because of archiving. Because when you archive, you move data into tertiary, secondary or tertiary lower cost storage. So there's definitely a benefit there. And of course, your downtimes and your administration costs for all maintenance activities will reduce, because the smaller the database size, the lesser the administration activities required. And of course, there are some other intangible things as well. Your user productivity improves because your application performance improves, and therefore you get some dollar savings there as well. So another question is, where will archive data be stored? So this archive data can be stored in a file system. It can be a file system in your SAP environment. It can be a file system outside your SAP environment. As long as the SAP system has access to that file system, you're good to go with archiving. So the other question was, for archive data, is there any additional size required in our present storage? So this is an interesting question. Uh, Firstly, the archiving process reduces your online database size, which means your storage requirements will reduce there. But where will these archive files be stored is the question, right? So archive files are stored in a file system. Yes, you will need to keep some space for storing those archive files. But what's key here is that these archive files are compressed up to a factor of 5, which means, say you have 100 GB, right? 100 GB of data in your database for a particular object. Your archive file size will be only 20 GB, and it is stored not in your tier one enterprise class storage, but in a secondary or tertiary archive storage. So you definitely get cost savings, and you don't need as much storage as you would need for your database. Another question was, is it necessary to go for open text for archiving? It is not necessary to go for open text for data archiving, but if you are looking for document management, document archiving implementation, then it is necessary to go with a solution like OpenText. So what OpenText provides for document archiving is it provides imaging capabilities, and it also is an archive link compliant solution. So while data archiving can work without an archive link compliant solution, document archiving cannot. So for document archiving, a solution like OpenText is mandatory. Another question was, can we get the data viewed through SAP standard reports after archiving? Yes, you can. There are many standard SAP transactions and reports which are already enabled to be able to read from the archive as well. So can we know? Another question was, can we know your recommendations for backups? So you could in this model, the archive data is stored in a file system, like I said. So you could bring that file system also into your regular backup policies. While they don't need to be backed up with the same rigor as your database data, you can have a typical backup policy defined for it, whereby you can mirror those files into a backup storage. Yes, so another question was again file system backup. So yes, you can do a file system backup for those files, correct. So another question is, presently our storage size is 500 GB at the time of archiving. Any additional size required? No, you would not need any additional size, because whatever little size is required for your archive files, much more than that is being actually saved from because of your database being reduced. So you don't need to have additional storage for that. What is the compression rate? So the compression ratio is, like I said, it's a factor of 5, up to a factor of 5. So most tables get compressed in the archive files by a factor of 5. There may be some cluster tables which are already compressed in SAP database, so the factor will not be as high as 5. It might be 2.5 or 3, but most of them are up to a factor of 5. So we have a few more minutes. Please feel free to post your questions on the chat. Okay, another question was, at the time of archiving, will it consume any additional network bandwidth? No, there will be no additional network bandwidth in this case, because the file is going to be sitting in your file system itself. So there's no real network operation involved, or there's no latency due to that. Okay, let me reiterate about the compression ratio. The compression ratio for standard archiving is up to a factor of 5. So which means if you have a 100 GB table and you're archiving it completely, your archive files will be only 20 GB. And the other thing I mentioned earlier was that the factor is up to 5, but if you have some cluster tables, for example, and the factor may be about 3 or 4, but it's up to a factor of 5. So the question is it an offline activity or an online activity? It's completely online. There is no downtime required for data archiving. So while your business is running, you can do your archiving jobs in the background. Okay, the other question is, what is the minimum contract duration? The minimum contract duration is 12 months, and post which you can choose to go for a lower base package or a pure support package. There's a question about whether it has any effect on custom object index. Can you just elaborate on that question, please? In the meanwhile, let me move to the next question. The question is, can we run deletion jobs in the daytime? The answer is yes, for objects which don't have business criticality. But if you are looking at running a deletion job for something like an FI data, which is being accessed during the daytime by business users, then it would not be advisable. It makes sense to do it in off-peak hours. But other data, for example, technical data which are not being accessed, you can go ahead and run the deletion jobs during the daytime as well. So another question was, will it affect performance? In fact, data archiving is meant to improve application performance. While you're running the jobs, yes, it makes sense to schedule your jobs in such a way that the key tables, the deletion operations on key tables are not happening during business peak hours. They can be scheduled accordingly during off-peak hours. Yes, so the question was if we create custom table indexes for improved performance of certain tables, certain standard tables, how does archiving consider those indexes as well? So when actually the table as well as the indexes are removed from the system. So there is no real impact in that sense. Your even post archiving, you can continue to use the existing indexes for the existing data in the table. So there's no impact as such in that from a table or a custom index standpoint. So after data archiving, do we need to do a reorg? Well, it's not mandated to do a reorg, but what a reorg will achieve is to defragment. It will bring all the free space into contiguous free space. If you don't do reorg, the free space will still be there. It is just that it will get used over a period of time because it is defragmented. It will be fragmented unless you do a reorg. So the other question is how to handle multiple small archive files created in the file system. So this is an important question, and a lot of customers ask this. So the advice we give is that there is a functionality called archive routing. So what this archive routing allows you to do is to route files to specific folders based on object or functional area, and maybe even more granularly like company code and year. So this way you can segregate data and have it more manageable in separate folder structures. And this is a standard functionality of SAP. It's called archive routing. So thank you all for your active participation. Please send us your questions, any additional questions that you have, and we can reply back to you with our answers. So we still have 8 minutes. So if you have any further questions that you want to raise now, we'll be happy to take it up. Yes, you can send us an email. So there was one question: can we reload data after archiving? Yes, some archive objects support this feature, but it is not a recommended practice to reload data after archiving because it might lead to inconsistencies. So it is best to be very clear about what you want to archive before you archive it. Okay, the other question is how to achieve SOX compliance for archive data. So, to be clear, if you are referring to managing compliance from a storage standpoint in terms of immutability of data or preventing tamper or preventing unauthorized access, so you can do this. You can control access to archive data even from SAP authorizations, or rather, it is controlled using SAP standard authorizations. So you can prevent which users can access archive data and who can have access to archive data. If you're looking at a solution which will prevent any unauthorized access at a file system level or at a storage level, so there are various ways to do this. So you can look at how you control typically access to your sandbox, right? You might have some software that protects your sandbox from unauthorized access. You continue to use that, or you can use an EWRM based solution like say a Sensera or a NetApp to store these archive files. So there are various ways to achieve this. It depends on what level of compliance you're looking for. So, so thank you for your participation so far. We still have 5 more minutes, so we can await your further questions. So someone asked how they can reach out to us for further information about this offering. So we will send you a summary email of this webinar with the recording link as well as our email address to contact us on. Rohini, who made the introduction earlier in this presentation, is our sales point of contact. So you will have her connect details as well. So if there are no more questions, thanks once again for your participation. It was a very interesting and lively session. So we look forward to hear from you. Please hold on. There is still one more question. Okay, the question is that can we share the question and answers? Yes, we will also share this. The Q&A will be shared with you all in the summary email. So thank you very much. Have a good day.